We're still coming live to you from the National Results Operating Centre in Midrand, the nerve centre of the IEC. But if you look behind me, where we'd normally have the leaderboard, you have the IEC's logo there with your democracy on it. And this is because it seems that the system is down, the result system is down. We're trying to get some explanation from the IEC with regards to what's happening. So even if you go onto their mobile site on your mobile device, you'll find that you won't be able to see the current results that have trickled in. The last time we were speaking, remember that the number of VDs that were completed was around at 51.92%. So hopefully that number would be increasing by the time that the system is up and running. Let's just quickly speak to Wouter Wessels, who is from the Freedom Front Plus, joining us in studio. Wouter, very good morning to you. Do you know, as a political party, by any chance, what's happening with the system?
We don't know, but the system was actually down for a long time already, since about 2 a.m. You would have seen that it wasn't updated at all. Nothing was updated. So we suspect and we hear that the error actually occurred quite a few hours ago, but that they are actually trying to solve the error, and that's why everything is being reset.
Okay.
So to speak, yeah.
Yeah, because it seems as though that it has been stagnant on that 51.92%. Okay. Wouter, the big story coming out of the 2014 elections, or 2019 elections rather, was that the Freedom Front Plus was able to more than double its number of seats in Parliament, if you compare that to the 4 seats that you had in 2014. Do you think that you'll be able to achieve that milestone again?
I don't think so. It was a very complicated election and a very difficult election as well. With all the changes that occurred, the fact that we now have a regional ballot and so forth, I don't think it's a very uncomplicated election, but it is an election for all of us to get excited about, especially with regards to Gauteng. And there the Freedom Front Plus is definitely going to be part of a coalition government which will better Gauteng, and that's something that we are excited about. The regional ballots also make things a little bit more complicated than just looking at that one screen of the national ballot and thinking that's going to be the outcome. People did vote differently on the 2 ballots, and it might change and completely affect the percentages of parties. Not that much that it will change who has a 50% majority or not, but it will change seats, and I think we will still have to wait up until about 70%, then we'll have a clearer picture of what is actually happening.
Yeah, what are your party agents telling you about Gauteng?
Gauteng, we are doing quite well. Grew in a lot of VDs, especially in Tshwane, in and around Tshwane. And we believe that we are going to hold our position. And if we look at the predictions and at the outcome at this stage, it is going to be a hung legislature, and the multi-party charter should be able to govern Gauteng.
Yeah. Are you able to indicate what your party agents are saying, though, about the numbers? Because I know sometimes political parties would have the numbers even before they are audited by the IEC.
We have not really calculated all the numbers yet because there's so many problems at some voting stations. But it is a clear indication that we are definitely growing, holding our position in representation. If we do those calculations, that the ANC is under 50% and that the multi-party charter together, those parties represented, does have more than 50%. That is what our figures are saying currently.
So how far below 50% would the ANC be? Because the ANC could always go into a coalition, for instance, with the EFF or any of the other political parties.
It doesn't seem like it in this stage. If we do the calculations correctly, it doesn't seem like that. But it might happen. You might be correct.
Yeah. What do you make of this? The possibility again of the ANC being pushed below that 50% plus one. A voter is quite confident that could happen or will happen. But that's also the story that we've been covering leading up to these elections and also the expectation. And I remember actually, voter, I don't know if you remember this, Jesse Duarte at the Tshwane events showground when the Rock was still there, sitting and looking at the numbers. She was the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC in 2019. And they'd almost given up and said that they've lost Gauteng. And later on, Julius Malema came out to say that actually Paul Mashatile had also conceded and said that they've lost Gauteng. And you think that this time around it will definitely happen?
I'm very, very confident.
Okay.
I'm very, very confident, yeah.
Your take on this?
Yeah, so I mean, if that is the case, and obviously the metro votes do need to come in and we'll start seeing if that is changing anything. The big question, and I think a lot of viewers at home would be wondering is, if we have a coalition in particular metros that have shown not to be effective, or there's a lot of gaming and horse trading that happens not to the benefit of people, will that same dynamic happen at a provincial level, right? If there's one coalition in the city of Tshwane that is different from the coalition at a provincial level, how does that impede governance? How does it impede service delivery? And from my side, I think having two sets of coalitions is probably for the best. Obviously, having one party winning at both levels creates a lot more certainty. But I think the question then becomes from a governance perspective about how do you manage that? Once the politics is done and the fanfare, how do you manage holding a coalition in a manner that is different from the past?
Yeah.
In my mind, that's what I'm concerned.
What's your answer to that, voter? Because we also know the instability with the coalition, with yourself as well as the Democratic Alliance. The Patriotic Alliance was part of that at some point, specifically with the metros, and the instability that has caused.
I think we are maturing with regards to coalition governments, but the problem is when it's only negotiated around positions, and when that is the only thing that's important. And when your agreements are actually only drafted around who holds what position, then it becomes this type of let's walk over, let's have motions of no confidence, because then we get bigger positions. It should be more centered around policy values. What is it that I promised my electorate, and what is it that in this 5 years of governance we can achieve? It should be a 5-year term contract with regards to governance principles and election promises that is actually holding that party, so that you are accountable to your voters and the people vote for you again. Not in the short term just getting salaries for your officials and your members and whatever with regards to mayors and in this instances MECs and so forth. I think if we get to that point where it's actually the implementation and the contract concerning certain priorities for that party, then it's going to be better, and I hope that we are moving towards that.
Because of it, on the absence then of a binding agreement, legally binding document, is that possible?
No. So, no, because we've seen, so a really good study came out of the Public Affairs Research Institute that really tracked what institutional arrangements look like before coalitions at a city level and then after. And that complete change about institutional arrangements almost mimicking patronage lines of sorts, and it speaks back to like these positions. And the question is, doing that at a local level, yes, is really bad for like localized service delivery, but its systemic impact on the country is very limited. When you start seeing that at a provincial level, right, when this, and I remember saying this at a gathering that Paul Mashatile had of political parties around coalitions last year, where I said, as long as the logic of political parties is winner takes all, rather than power sharing, any discussion about coalitions doesn't make sense, right? You can't say we put in the laws for power sharing, but the culture is still winner takes all, and it just breeds that type of chaos. So one of the things that I think a lot of the electorate will be looking at when we're evaluating this new democracy that we're in over the next 5 years is when we create coalitions at a provincial level, does it mimic the type of chaos that we see in metros, or does it mimic the types of coalitions that happen across the country? It's like 77 plus coalitions or something like that, that are very stable, that focus on policy, that focus on delivery. but the spoils are just a lot larger in provinces, and that temptation to think about positions, to think about patronage, is a lot stronger.
Speaking about positions, Wouter, the agreement going into the MPC, the multi-party charter, was that the political party that gets the largest share of the vote is part of the multi-party charter. If there is a hung legislature, that political party will decide who becomes the premier.
No.
Wait,
No.
that's the conversation that I had with Velinkosi Hlabisa, and he said that was the agreement.
No, it's not the agreement.
Okay, wait, so how's it going to happen?
It is, all partners are on an equal decision-making stance. So it will obviously, the party with the largest share of the votes will have a bigger say, but one of the principles in the multi-party charter agreement is that it is not a given that the party with the most votes becomes premier or becomes president on national level. That's one of the principles.
So Solim Simanga might not become premier.
Correct.
That's interesting.
That is fascinating. I mean, going back to this conversation about power sharing, what power sharing really looks like, I mean, seeing it in actuality might be interesting, but you also don't want a situation where, and I hate to go back to the cities, of having a smaller party being the leader of a province without that democratic representation. So Al Jama in the city of Joburg having 1% representation. So I imagine there has to be a balance. I imagine the Democratic Alliance will still say this is ours to run with. So it would be interesting to hear about what the pushback would be.
I think the thing is that that's an extreme example with the city of Johannesburg. Usually that won't happen. But we did agree, and that's in the agreement, that it is about fit for purpose. And it is with regards to, it might be that the leader of the party with the largest share will be better fitted in another position, maybe in charge of the legislature arm and not the executive arm. So those type of decisions will be taken, and that is very important in the coalition negotiations in the next 14 days to actually get that sorted out.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. So this would apply at a national level as well?
Yes.
It applies at a national level.
Yes.
Just a quick one in conclusion. With the 2019 vote and the strides that you had made there, the analysis, even from the Democratic Alliance, was that some of their voters had moved to the Freedom Front Plus. Has there been a reversal from your analysis currently?
It's possible. It looks like it, yes. And it might be that if the DA would gain a percentage or two, it seems as though they would gain that percentage of 2 from us, which the electorate should analyze and should see.
What's your analysis?
Well, let me put it bluntly. There was fear politics, saying that if you don't vote for the second largest party, the ANC would win again. Now, to grow your vote from 20 to 21%, or maybe to 23%, we don't know, but that's doubtful. But that didn't take away from the ANC. That didn't make that the ANC is under 50%. The Western Cape, there's a lot of fear politics in the Western Cape where it was said that if you don't vote for the DA, the ANC would win. There's even polls that came out by certain organizations that put the ANC on 35, 36%, which is impossible because in 2019 in the Western Cape, the ANC only got 16%. Then they were still performing all right nationally. How would they increase in the Western Cape with more than 20% and fall in the rest of the country? It's impossible. So it's fear politics, and people vote. We see that in the USA as well. You vote for Biden so that Trump doesn't become president. Race does play a role as well, unfortunately. And but this election was important to show that the ANC can be won, and hopefully our democracy then matures, so people see that they can vote beyond ethnicity, beyond racial lines, and not out of fear, but what you actually agree with.
Okay, thank you so much, Wouter Wessels there.